Welcome everyone to the Hell World Guy, and let's quickly get started with today's video because this is going to be a very good one. Alright, so now what we are going to do is first of all what I want to do, I will explain that to you. So in this video what I actually want to do is create a system for spawning enemy. When I started the tutorial, I wanted this to be a level based game and we could spend our time making a couple of levels and then we can create a level progression system. But now I have decided that it's much better and much easier for a beginner especially. So just for now we are going to not do that and instead create a wave based game. So we will design a single hopefully large level, and then in that we can have a wave based system in which different enemies are spawned randomly around the map and they go towards the player, etc, etc, etc. So in order to do that, let's just start with something really basic and we can engineer it more in the future videos. In order to do that, first of all we actually need to create a system for spawning the enemies. In order to accomplish that, I'm going to open up my prefab folder and I'm going to drag my enemy in here to create a prefab out of the enemy. Then I can actually just delete my enemy. Now what this essentially will have me do is have this prefab, we will pass it to an object, a script that will essentially do all of the spawning for us. Moreover, now what I want to do is have a bunch of points. So I'm going to create an empty game object here called spawn points. Now this is basically for organization. We don't really need that, but I'm going to add in an empty object here called spawn point 1. If you make the one in brackets, then Unity will automatically detect things for you and it will automatically number it for you. So what I'm going to do is select my spawn points and I'm going to change its location to be 0 0 0, and then I'm going to select my spawn point 1 and I'm going to basically just duplicate it 3 times, I guess, for now. And I'm going to move this here. I'm going to just change its rotation to where I want it to be facing, and then I can select the second point and I can make it there behind this maybe. Okay, okay, there, and yeah, that's pretty awesome. And then I can select my first point and I can move it something like over there, and I can rotate it to be facing the player, but it's behind the wall. So yeah, these are basically the 3 points where our enemies will be spawned. Now what are we going to do next is not that complicated really. So for what I'm going to do is right click here and create yet another empty object which is not a child of this, called enemy spawner. Now this will actually handle all of our enemy spawning. I'm going to move it to 0 0 0, even though that's not necessary. I just like to have my game management objects at 0 0 0, but that's up to you. So what I'm going to go is do is go to scripts, right click and create a new C# script here called enemy spawner. And in here we can start programming the behavior for the actual enemy spawner. So I'm going to open this up in Visual Studio. I'm going to remove the generic system.collection as a generic tag, but not the other one. I'm going to remove the update method, but instead just replace this with a private I enumerator. So we are going to use a coroutine here, as you probably should have guessed, and I'm going to call this spawn enemy. Now before we actually start programming this, I'm going to go in here and I'm going to first of all have a serialize field, a private game object called enemy. This is going to be our enemy prefab, and then I'm going to add in another game, not a game object. I'm going to call this is going to be of type transform, and this is going to be an array of transforms called spawn points. Then I'm going to create here a private float called spawn delay. Actually I'm going to call this initial spawn delay because we may want to ramp it down as the game progresses, so that there is kind of a difficulty curve. And I think that's all the variables we need. So now what I'm going to do is create a private variable here, not serialized. This is going to be of type int, and this is going to be called spawn index. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is go under the spawn enemy routine And here what we can do is, first of all, I'm going to say yield return come on, yield return new, wait for a second, init spawn delay. And then we are going to, what we are going to do is we are going to say instantiate enemy, and the position is going to be the spawn points, the spawn points, uh, and this is going to be spawn index. Now I'm just going to make sure that the spawn index is 0 when the game starts. And what we are going to do here is just say spawn index plus plus. And now we are going to say if spawn index is greater than or equal to spawn points dot left, then we are going to say spawn index is equal to 0. And then we are going to start this coroutine again. And then what I'm going to do in the start method is just start this coroutine once. So what we're basically doing is starting the coroutine, which will then spawn the enemy, increase the spawn index and stuff, and then it will start the coroutine again, and it will wait for some set amount of settings in between, and this is going to be 7 seconds by default. I just found that to be a really good value. So if I just let it compile, then this should essentially work, to be honest. So if I go here and drag in an enemy spawner, and then I can drag go under here, I'm going to just lock the inspector, and then I'm going to go here and drag this enemy in here, and I'm going to select the spawn points and change its length to be 5. Oh, not 5, we have got 3, and go under spawn points, and then I'm going to drag 1, 2, and 3 here. And now I'm going to unlock the inspector. Now if I hit play, then it should essentially work, hopefully. So if I go here and let's wait for a while, an enemy should appear here. Okay, he does. And if I wait for a little more, and another enemy should appear, and you can see that he does appear there. And if I wait a little bit more, an enemy should appear here as well. So he's not. Okay, why? They're supposed to be okay. This enemy is actually located here. So yeah, you can see that all of the enemies got spawned at their correct positions. And if I go under the scene view, and if I just move a little bit up, you can see spawn point 1 is there, spawn point 2 there, and 3 there, and all of the enemies are at their correct positions. So what I can do now is yeah, we can shoot the enemies, and if I go in front of them, they will try to okay, they will try to chase me, but you can see that suddenly they turn into 3. Actually, the reason for that is that our script is currently spawning multiple enemies at a single place, and only when they start to move they realize that they are colliding and then try to move away from each other, which causes multiple copies of them to be formed. So yeah, this is a problem that we need to fix, but you can see that the basics are working, to say the least. Even if I go in front of this, then okay, there were too many of these and they kind of just immediately kill me. So yeah, a couple of problems, but the basic idea is functional. So with that done, now we are going to improve upon our design a bit. And the first thing I'm going to do is get rid of the enemy view con mechanic, even though we spent a bit of time implementing that, but we really don't need it now. So I'm going to open up the enemy script. Yeah, and I'm going to just, what is it now? Okay, the value is never used. Oh yeah, of course, that field is not needed. Okay, so what we can do is basically remove this FOV here, and in here we can also remove this and this. So yeah, this is basically what we want. We don't want to have any of this really, because that's really not needed. So this should essentially work, because now we can also remove this boolean value, and now this should essentially cause the enemy to go after us all the time. So if I let it compile and go into Unity, it should work actually. So yeah, and I hit play, and now as soon as our enemy spawner starts spawning enemies, it should start working. So go here, I'm going to jump up. Oh, and as you can see, he just started chasing me without waiting for anything. This is essentially a terrible system, because currently we are just spawning enemies and it's kind of really hard to avoid them, because they can attack you from quite far away actually. And yeah, it's really not the best thing, but you can see that the basic idea is functioning. You just spend the game killing enemies and doing this kind of stuff, and you can just kind of try to make as a high kill count as you can. So first thing I would like to do to improve upon this a bit is select my enemy thing, enemy prefab, and I'm going to change I'm going to change its stopping distance to 2 and the range to 2 as well, I guess, because currently it's really large, believe me. So if I play it right now, 3 is just way too large in my opinion. So even if I just climb on this, what you should see is that as soon as the enemy is spawned, where is it? And as soon as he spawns, he immediately starts going towards me. And now there is a good amount of distance that he needs to come to in order to actually attack me, which kind of makes sense really. And as you can see, this is just the basic gameplay and it's pretty good. So yeah, the basic idea is working. Now of course we do need to improve our spawning system a lot, but we will actually do that in the next video. In this video, the only thing that I would like to implement is that when we actually need to keep track of the player's kill count, so how many enemies he has eliminated, and in the end we can use that as a score or that kind of thing. We can even display it in the death screen. So in order to do that, let's quickly get started doing that. Alright, so for that, this is my shooting script here, and in here, as you can see, we are basically we have got a couple of things here. So when we do shoot, we just make the damageable, which is the enemy, take damage, and that's pretty good. But it really doesn't make much sense to implement the logic here for actually increasing the kill count, because here we are only doing the damage. We actually don't know if the enemy died or not. So but of course we want the variable to be attached to the player, so a private int kill count should be nice, and this is by default going to be of course 0. And I'm going to create a public void here called increment kill count. Now what this function will essentially do is kill count plus plus, because that's what it will do. Now of course we won't allow it to decrement that in kill count, and this is the only public function we will have. Now in the enemy class, I'm going to add in the on that function here, and this destroys the game object obviously. One more thing it does. Okay, so the second thing it will do is get the player. So we have got the player here, and I'm going to say player dot increment player dot get component. The player is get component of type shooting come on, dot increment kill count, and that should work. But of course we can actually see that right now. So in order to do that, I'm going to go back under the shooting script. In here what I'm going to do is essentially it's not going to be that complicated. What we are going to do is use the text mesh pro. Okay, so I'm not going to actually do that. Instead I'm going to go here and add in the serialize field here of type tm pro, that's a namespace dot text mesh pro ugui, and this is going to be called kill count text. Okay, so in here what we are going to do is say kill count text dot set text and then we are going to say kill count. Okay, so what we are going to do actually is alright, we'll just say kill count dot to string, but I think it would be a really good idea if we okay, so if we added something like this kill count, or maybe something like enemies killed. Now this should be a pretty good thing. That's all we need to do for the coding. And now if once it compiles, I'm going to go into Unity like that, and I'm going to right click here and go. I'm going to of course select my main canvas, right click here, go UI, and add in a text of type text mesh flow of course, and this is going to be the kill count text. So if I go under the game view, I'm going to make sure that it is in center aligned. Then I'm going to move this to anchor it to the left, and then I'm going to make its position on the y negative 50 instead of what it is currently. Maybe not negative 50, negative 75. Oh no, negative 75, maybe negative 30. Yes, and then I'm going to change this to enemies skill. Okay, so I'm going to maybe make it left aligned after all, I guess, and then make this 120. All right, so enemy skilled, and of course I'm going to make sure that it is stretched vertically, and then I'm going to add a little bit of offset to the left, something like 15 should do good, and that's pretty cool. So now what I can do is go under here and enemy skill and 0. Okay, now I can do now is select my player and drag this kill count text in order in here in the kill count text tool, and now when I hit play, then you can see that it's saying enemy skill 0. Okay, and now if I wait a little bit for the enemy to spawn, and then I will kill him, and if I do that, then it should work. So if I shoot the enemy, okay, this is going to be complicated. Okay, so you can see I just killed an enemy, and it has incremented my kill count once, and if I kill yet another one, okay, as you can see it's kind of really hard. Maybe our damage is a bit too low, you can try increasing that, but you can see it's working, and it's saying enemy skill 3 right now, and I can, if I actually manage to kill more enemies, okay, I didn't, but if I did, then it was working. So this is a functioning system. Now, before I wrap up this video, there is only one more thing I would like to add. That is, we want a gradual increase in difficulty. So, what we will do is we will essentially just decrease this initial spawn delay. So, I'm actually going to rename this to spawn delay, because, come on, just call it spawn delay. And then, actually, we won't do that. We will leave it at initial spawn delay, and we will have a private float here called spawn delay, which is not going to be equal to nothing, but in the start method we are going to say is equal to the initial spawn delay. And then what we will do is so whenever we set this to, so in every time we, okay, so we can do it basically two ways. We can either do it like every time we spawn an enemy, we can make it a little smaller. We can even say spawn delay multiply is equal by 0.9. So that should, okay, F, that should essentially just decrease it little while. So so that should essentially increase the difficulty by making the enemy spawn faster. Or you can, if you prefer, do it in the you can do it whenever the spawn count is reset to provide an easier curve. So yeah, this is pretty much it for this video, and I will see you in the next video, and bye. And you can test this out by yourself.